G'day everyone, welcome to the Opal Mills. Today I'm going to be doing my best to address an ongoing question that will be ongoing forever and ever. Where do I buy my rough opal? So I thought I'd do a video that just covers most of what I understand about it all. A lot of explanation of the players and all that sort of thing, where you fit into it. I'll even suggest a few places that you should, or not should, but can go to buy some rough. And we'll get to all this, but hopefully within a timely manner. So I've written out a bit of an essay to sort of guide me on this, so I can explain rough opal parcels and how to go about what you're sort of looking for. And a lot of people are just confused, unsure, and spending the money, not too sure on the pricing, and I'll go into all this anyway. So here we go. So let's start by introducing all the characters in this whole little story of opal. And I think it really starts with the miner. Clearly, from the miner, the end of this spectrum will be, I'll put it down here because we might need some space, the customer. So the miner to the customer or new owner, final purchaser, and in between there are quite a few stages. So a miner, hey, he might cut opal, have it set, and sell it himself. So you probably won't buy from that miner. But from this miner, this fella's going to sell it to a buyer. Now, that buyer could be you, if you get to know the miner. Otherwise, it's a buyer that's like you or is just into selling, buying and selling. So they would be your next port of call. From there, you can have someone who may even buy it from the miner, but buys it, cuts what they want, and then sells the rest on. Now, eventually it's got to end up in the hands of a cutter. Now that's no doubt you. So this video should have explained earlier. This is more for those coming into opal, learning how to buy opal and what to consider. Most everyone else should already know most of this stuff anyway. But for those wondering, here we go. So the cutter will cut, but what does he do with it? Maybe just sells his stones on. Otherwise, put it over here. You may have a cutter jeweler who cuts the stones once they've bought it from the buyer and seller, cuts their stones and then sets their stones to sell. From there, it may just end up in the hands of a jeweler. So the jeweler just buys cut stones, sets them, sells them. A retailer may just be somebody who buys set stones and then retails them or works as a retailer for the jeweler. And then of course there's the customer. To break it down, we'll look at the miner. He could be a part-time miner, full-time miner, we don't know. He may be a buyer or seller, he may be a cutter, he may be a jeweler. The buyer-seller is somebody who likes to buy usually from a miner, but buyers and sellers will also buy from each other and on-sell, and it may be that a few buyers and sellers have had their hands on the parcel before it finally reaches you. Then you have the buyer-seller-cutter combination. So they on-sell the rough after they've bought the rough, cut what they want, sell it on. Then you've just got the cutter, assume most of this is aimed at you guys, so this will be you, and you're looking to know where to buy it from. So there are your two options, from a miner or a buyer seller. The jeweler is the one that's got to deal with what you produce. And if that's you, you can cope with your own mess, but other than that, you're going to have to produce what the jeweler's requirements are. And you'll have to learn that along the way for cutting. The retailer, they sell cut and or set stones. So they may just retail loose stones as well as set stones. Opal is a hard thing for the industry to have jumped in, because unlike most other jewellery that can be photographed one to the next, they all look alike. Since no two opals are alike and a photo never does it justice, the marketability on a mass scale was always going to be a hard task, which is what made it very hard. You can't put a catalogue out and advertise something and then one person gets that one, everyone else gets something similar, and it's like, no, that's not the one in the catalogue, I want my money back. So this posed a big problem for the industry early days, which is why it never really got to do what other industries did with their standards. When we look at the buyer and seller, we need to make sure, as I suppose with the miner, if he's the seller, are they established and reputable to buy from, be it the miner or the seller, for cut and rough? Like, who do they sell to? Are they just selling to commercial or private sales? And you'll have to become a commercial buyer or a big private buyer to get their business. Or are they supplying customer requests or for sale parcels, or just to his collectors that buy up everything they've got? So there's that side of it, of the buyer and seller, because a buyer does not always end up sending their stuff to a jeweler. So where you fit into this, that I'm aiming this video at, is here. You. So as a beginner cutter, you fall somewhere in the supply chain. So you could, like me, try and go out and mine some opal. Otherwise, like me, I also need to buy, and I can buy from other miners or sellers. And then I do what I do, but this is about you. So what you look for when you're buying is like an honest seller for starters. Make sure their photos, footage and description and good feedback, and that they offer a refund policy, mostly important, and we'll get to that as well. So the absolute first thing to consider is your capabilities. So by that I mean cutting, solids, carvings, doublets, triplets, inlay, mosaic. These will all be a big factor in buying a parcel and maximizing that parcel. Not just for the solids, but if there's leftover scraps or bits and pieces that it just, you have to buy the parcel because it comes once or as one lot. You've got to figure out, well, what do I do with the scrap? Is there anything I can do? And that's where your potch becomes doublet backings or triplet backings. The thin stuff can be made for inlay or mosaics and so forth. Carvings for pieces that aren't quite suitable for cutting a solid standard cut. So your capabilities is of utmost importance in this whole thing. If all you can do is cut solids, you're going to be looking at parcels, looking at the solid stones you can cut from it, and looking at the rest as, oh, what's that scrap? Why are they even putting that in there? And yet someone else would look at it and go, oh, awesome. I can get my triplets, my inlay doublets, or I can get some carvings out of that other, they can maximize it. So to them, they're willing to pay the price. You may not be, and therefore you may not understand the pricing. So being able to expand your capabilities to arrange is of advantage, especially when buying rough parcels. Stick to buying rub stones or cleaned up parcels, paying a premium, and you should still make a slight profit off if you want a sure thing. But not everyone starting out wants to buy a parcel and get rich quick. Not going to happen, guaranteed. Some people, yeah, they cotton on quite quick and do quite well and bought lucky. That one parcel that did do that thing where somebody got lucky and they happened to get it. And these are the stories you hear, and we all wish that we were that person. So your capabilities are so important to select appropriate parcels. First, you got to look at the parcel, and you've got a bunch of questions you've got to ask yourself. Could you even sell that parcel for what you pay for it without even touching it? Like, could you just on-sell it and go break even? Like, if you don't think you could do that, you're probably paying too much. Or you're not skilled enough to handle that parcel. Either way, move on to another one. Or if they're willing to negotiate, you can always try. It's no harm in that, and it's no offense, and as long as you can take no for an answer sometimes, that's fine. You also got to consider, well, how rough is rough? Because you can buy some parcels that are just the whole wash, everything that came out, and it's not been evaluated, and we'll get to that. That's one person I left out the supply chain, actually, the evaluator. An evaluator, we'll get to that actually now, has to be involved sooner or later. The sooner it is, the more assured what is what it is. Till then, it's negotiable. So an evaluator is kind of like the final word, if you will. An evaluator should not put an offer in on a parcel they evaluate. They should not be in conflict of interest at all, really. Impartial, preferably. I use someone in Adelaide. They have no dog in the fight. They don't own a mine. They don't buy and sell Opal or other gemstones. They do nothing but expertise in evaluation, and they are trusted quite all over the place. That said, some evaluators are miners. Some evaluators do this, that, and the other, and can evaluate. And with all honesty, which is usually the case because no one would want to risk a reputation, once it's hit the evaluator and they've put a name to it and put their opinion out there for the public scrutiny, then usually they're within the ballpark very closely. There would only be a couple of cents in the dollar difference between one to the next if done right. Once this is done though, there's the price. There's no more negotiation except for how badly do you need the money? How badly do you need the Opal? But this can happen either the miner gets graded and evaluated straight away, which means you pull out the potch and colour or just potch, and you probably don't even hand that to the evaluator because he's not going to put a price on that really. It's not worth his time. And let him grade what's worth evaluating, and he'll put a price on that. The rest of it is up to the miner to go, well, I could put some beginner parcels together maybe if he wants to maximise how to sell it all. But either way, once the evaluator steps in, what is. Now, till then, it's all negotiable. So for some, the later that the evaluator steps in, the more negotiation and fun it is to get the bargains happening. That could go for or against you. Nature of the beast, can't complain. What goes on the field stays on the field. But once the evaluator's there, he's the referee. He says goes. So that said, looking at the parcel, has it been evaluated? Then you've got more of an assured what you should be able to get out of it. If you don't think you can, maybe your skills aren't up to par yet, and that's a parcel above your grade. Look for one more appropriate. Or if you don't look past the bargain, you kind of buy it and put it away for later as an investment. But if not, it's negotiable because it's unevaluated, even though the miner and everyone else has a pretty good idea of what it's worth without having to go to the evaluator, because we know what the evaluator said by the last lot that looked the same. So we get a ballpark figure without having to pay one. And that's where negotiations happen a bit more easily. So that aside, You do business how you do business. Best off paying for what you want. Make sure it is what you want, and off you go. And everyone's happy. Mine is first one to get paid. Or go broke. So yeah, you've got to look at how rough is rough. Is it graded or evaluated? Large versus small parcels, pros and cons. The larger the parcel, the cheaper you could get as a bulk figure. I'm going to probably tell a couple of little stories throughout this. One will be loosely based on what I've heard and may or may not have happened in Andamuka end of last year. So I'll just go by what I've heard without mentioning anything, because I don't really know too many to mention. I don't know these people, but rumour goes people came to Andamuka and stayed, and I think were tourists. Don't quote me. May have known someone in town. I don't know. Ended up down a scrape nonetheless that had no claim on it, and had a bit of a scratch. Found something. Now this something was worth going off and buying brand new machinery to come back and retrieve all of it. And what they ended up with was a $2 million payday. Weehaw. Dreams. But let's put that into perspective without demeaning, because I've never seen the parcel. I'm not commenting on this parcel or the people or anything to do with it, but I want to break down such an event. This was 40 kilo, apparently. Don't quote me, but apparently, and let's go with that. 40 kilo as a $2 million sale. 40 kilo is 40,000 grams. Is 200 carats. 200,000 carats. At 200,000 carats, we only need to add one more zero to make $2 million, which means at $10 per carat, at 200,000 carats is 2 million. So that was just $10 a carat material. It was quantity that helped that figure be realized. So you hear these big strikes and it's 40 kilo, wow. That'll be worth a lot once it's cut. But the 40 kilos is a lot of material, people. I tell you. That aside, that's just a little story and a bit of perspective on numbers and how they translate in full. So, pros and cons of large versus small parcels. I'm sure if that parcel was broken down, I reckon that would have been a on the spot, take the lot price, even if it was broken down into $500,000 parcels. So they would have been broken down further, cut, sold, I don't know. But as a bigger parcel, it's that price. I'm sure if it was broken down, like I said, to the $500,000, it may stay at the $10 price, but you'd start looking at 15 a carat. You'd raise the price slightly as the parcel gets diminished and smaller, because then there's more sales, and of course they should earn a little bit more. That's just a one-off sale price, I'd say, and yeah, $10 a carat. Awesome. Smaller parcels, you're going to be paying a bit more for. Gamble parcels are a misnomer on, is it a gamble for you? Is it a gamble because it's a gamble for everyone, which means the miner may have passed something on without knowing it because he sold a gamble parcel without knowing what's in it? Or is it a gamble parcel where the miner knows there's nothing he wants in it and it's a gamble for you parcel? So careful on gamble parcels, but gamble parcels are generally, you can see if there's a gamble in there or not. You're just buying hope in that respect. So, big, small parcels, you guys starting out, I would not recommend spending a fortune. You stick to low dollars and low carats, and make sure that what you're doing is what the market's after if you're trying to sell too. And we'll get to that. Okay, once you understand your capabilities and you've summed yourself up, you're going to look for a parcel, but you need to know, well, what is a fair price? So you need to understand as much as you can about the material, obviously your capabilities. You need to learn to estimate the yields versus weight ratio, as in how much you'll end up with cut once finished. Can you guess from looking at it? You need to scrutinize the opal when you're looking at it. Again, you may have paid for it already, had it sent. You should be able to get a refund. Don't touch it if you don't think you can deal with it. You got to understand what's the carat price for finished stones, and can you sell them? It's how much do you know about opal? That's what a fair price is. Otherwise, you're just never going to understand, because each parcel is unique. One person could have done this, you did that. So a fair price, what you're comfortable with, based on what you know. Understanding the material. So to touch on this a bit, you've got to consider things like the body tone. Let's put this down. Body tone, i.e. is it black, white, light, dark, crystal, jelly, matrix, boulder? What kind of opal is it? And what body tone does it have? Like with boulder, it's going to be a brown. You can have a nice dark backing therefore, and it can go to black. Matrix, it's a sandstone matrix or quartz matrix, or who knows. Boulder technically is a matrix, but it's got enough opal that it's opal on matrix rather than opal in matrix mixed. Once you understand that, you got to consider the color. Obviously the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So the pricing high to low, but then there's combinations like just red and blue without anything in between. Well, that's a bit of something. So that, if you've got, could be worth more than it would be if it was just one color. Just saying. I can't tell you these prices. You'll have to see an evaluator. A pattern. Boulder opal. I looked up some things. I'm going to include a bunch of, in the description, links to where I source my information from, so you can find it too and treat it as reputable or not as you want, but I'll put it out there anyway. So pattern for boulder, you've got things like tribal, honeycomb, scale, galaxy, reef, eye kernel, patchwork. In pretty much all other opal, including boulder, you got rolling flash, ribbon, mackerel, broad flash, floral, harlequin, script, flagstone, pinfire, moss, chaff, striated, straw, jigsaw, cat's eye, star, leaf, palette, wisteria, feather, cloverleaf, sheen. So there's probably a lot more than that even in patterns. There's quite a bit to consider. And how you judge the pattern depends on how big the pattern is and what's going on in the stone. It's just a broad flash if it's one color and the whole stone flashes, but if you get a stone bigger than that that's got another color and that flashes two colors, that's flagstone, and so forth. You've got to consider the size, which will be the viewable surface, the width, height, dimension, sort of depth. Without weighing it, it's how much viewable surface. So you've got a 10 carat stone that's, say, 15 mil by 12 mil oval, few mil thick, and it's 10 carat, as opposed to another 10 carat with a higher dome, which will bring the size of the overall stone down because it's thicker. And so it may be a 10 by 8. And they're both two 10 carat stones, but the bigger one has a lower dome but more viewing surface, and you translate that to, well, what if there was obviously a 10 by 12 with a higher dome than the original one? Well, clearly it would be a higher price, but there's all these little things to consider with the size. It's the viewable surface that's what you're going to see. It's all about aesthetics with opal. So then you consider your carats, the weight of the stone. You've got to consider the cut and shape. Is it a free form? Can you cut ovals? Are they calibrated ovals? Which will be very important if you want to make sure your opals do sell. They're always more in demand for that. Otherwise, create your own market, do what you want, which is kind of what I'm sort of doing. Then there's the other cuts of the novels. You got the cushion, you got teardrop, triangle, round, and so forth. But that's kind of important, the ovals. That's why I wrote important. Remember that, Phil? Little notes. The field it comes from. Is it Lightning Ridge, Cooper Pedy, Andamuka, Minterby, White Cliffs, Koroit, Yower, Opalton, Eromanga, Lambina back in the day. Not sure if anything's coming out of there now, but there used to be Lambina Opal, which is instead of chucking a left to Minterby when you get to Marla, you chuck a right to Lambina. The yield, which is the final cut carrots you've got to consider once you're looking at the rough parcel and going, well, what's the yield? It's how much do you think it's going to weigh once you've removed everything you've got to remove and the waste is taken into account. Imperfections, like how flawed is your stones, and faults and cracks that you got to work around, and fractures and sand and potch and yeah. Treatments, will it require a treatment? Is it going to be natural? How are you going to be dealing with your opal? By matrix, clearly it's a longer process than just cutting a stone, because you've got to sometimes treat it, then cut it, then treat it, then treat it again, treat it and treat it. And yeah, it's a bit more involved than just standard glassy opal that you just cut and there you go. More work, less value, but still valuable. So considering all that, your pricing of the final product based on your capabilities, your skill level is in, your ability to make a sale, and that should let you know what you want to pay for in the rough. So understanding material is just going to come with experience, and the more you do and have to do with it and look at what others are doing, that's all part of the experience. Don't just look at the selling prices that people put on their stuff. Find out what it actually sold for when you can. That gives you more of an idea of what the market is actually doing. The carat price on parcels also, that's just an average carat price. That doesn't mean every single carat in, say, this example up here, not every single carat was a $10 carat. Some of it was $100, maybe $1,000 a carat. And other was just the potch that came with it because it's 40 kilos whole parcel, whole pocket. You know, like it's an average price. And from there, that average price could be escalated by a really good cutter. That could be like 10 times what they pay. They could turn that into $20 million plus once set in jewelry easily. Maybe there's just $2 million worth and you're going to make 6 to 8 once a lot of work's been put in. So that's not all pure profit. But yeah, so understanding material, what it'll do, that's going to come with experience and maybe listening to the ramblings of people like me a bit. Don't take it to heart, don't take it for gospel, just take it on board and do what you will with it, if it makes sense. So I'm just going to introduce you to the folklore I'm brought up with, which has a couple of unwritten rules. So, on average, 1 in 7 parcels is going to be your payday. If you're buying and you're averaging it and you're doing well, that's not to say the other 6 aren't cutting it. With a rough average of 1 out of 7 parcels turning a decent profit, while the other 6 do okay, but not great. So if you're buying and you're buying reasonable, then you should do well, really well, 1 in 7. That's a lot of experience looking back and going, yeah, not every parcel paid, but there was a few good ones in there, and I did all right. And that's looking back once you get the hang of what you're doing. So there's that kind of a unwritten guideline, and the 20% rule is consider that you will lose 80% in cutting, scrap, and 20% will be what you cut, final carat price. So here we go again. Say you have a 1 ounce parcel, and we can go 2 ways with that. It's, you know, from a 28, normal 28.3495 gram ounce to a troy ounce of 31.1035 grams. That'll translate to 140 to 155 carats. Now, get that right when you're paying big money on parcels. Other than that, usually they come a few carats over. Usually it's a bit of potch to make it up, but you can't complain then. But nonetheless, let's go with the 140 for this. And let's go with it being a decent graded opal. It doesn't have to be evaluated, but at least someone's gone, you know what, here's the cuttable bits, there's not the shrapnel, you know, some bits that just look pretty in a jar, and that's at best. And so let's say this parcel is priced at $1,400 to make maths easier. That'll equal $10 a carat. At 140 carats, at $10 will be $1,400. First, you need to see that you can turn that into a profit. With a rough average of 1 out of 7 parcels turning a decent profit, while 6 do okay but not great, that will fluctuate. Try to aim for 20% of the parcel being the final cut weight, i.e. 28 carats. Per ounce. So at 28 carats per ounce, and going by that rule, you would need to see at least $50 per carat times 28, surprise, surprise, will be your original $1,400. That'll break you even. So looking at your parcel, you need to consider all these things. What am I going to get at the end? And can I sell it and all that sort of thing? But if you're only going to get that, do it for fun or don't bother. Then also take into consideration the postage that you're paying on top of that $1,400 if it's being posted. Your cutting costs and your selling costs, they will eat into your profit, and you may need to reevaluate. So me, if I was to take $1,400 and invest it on a risk, which is everything's a risk until it's sitting on someone's ring, neck, brooch, ears, it's all a risk. Something always can happen and go wrong. But for the risk here, it's risking my money. So $1,400, I would want to see a minimal of, say, $100 a carat material, like material that'd be worth $100 in the rough. So at that, you could consider $10 per carat, $100 once cut. That's 10 times, but that's on a graded parcel, not just a rough put together parcel that's got everything from the small to the big. And you just figure out what you can do with it. This would be on a parcel that there's probably not going to be much left to do doublets inlay with anyway. This is a very good parcel, by the way. But nonetheless, I would look at that, and you know, maybe even 75. If it was $75 per carat, I'd accept $75 a carat material, because from $1,400, that's still a $2,100 return, which is $700 for my efforts. As long as that equates to worth my time, I'd do it. But I've got to be able to sell that. That's the other important thing. If the parcel's been graded and evaluated, it should have been, especially if evaluated, it should have been graded correctly. But a parcel can be graded without evaluation. It is more open to opinion or one's expertise. Therefore, a negotiation can take place. So that's up to who knows more about what is being sold. And that's where you can sell it cheap, or you can sell it overpriced, or you can sell it at the right price. It's get an evaluator if you want a sure thing. All right, well, let's try and put a bit of visuals on what I'm talking about now. So this is where your capabilities, they become a big factor, as not all parcels are going to have all cuttable stones with little waste. So you need to know if you can maximize the full potential of a parcel, including making doublets, triplets, inlay, mosaic, even just for specimens. Or can you sell to someone who can? What's your purpose for buying? Are you just, are you in it to cut? Which we are. So we may get someone else to set it for us, but we're all into the cutting side. So here's what you're looking at. It starts small, and I'll start small but good. Here, there's some really tiny, bright little chips that are just absolutely gorgeous. But looking at the size of them against my fingernail, and they're in a jar, which magnifies them slightly, Always look at your opal outside a jar when deciding whether you're going to pay for it or not, or return it or not. So all this material is very small. I would only be using this for inlay, and if you want mosaics, I don't think there's any really, maybe doublet material in there. Not sure about that one, but yeah, most of this is just inlay. So don't get excited by all the color. Not to say that I couldn't turn that into quite a few $1,000s. As inlay in silver rings, I can sell the silver rings, and selling the silver rings worth not much, but with the opal inlay, it jumps the price up. So it's what can you do with the opal, even the small bits. Over here, starting on the, not the bottom end of the scale, but not the cut stones end of the scale, we have fossils, like the shells. I think there's some tree branches and sort of stuff. There's a bit of a snail spiral in there somewhere. But this is all shell, mostly, nonetheless, all fossil material. And this, you're not going to be able to cut, unfortunately. Neither am I, because I said so. Oops. So we're going to keep that. That's a nice little jar. But that's fossil material, and that, if you want to use it for inlay again, or mosaics, whatever, sometimes you can get some nice doublets out of it from the thin skin shells. If you can get a flat enough surface, some really bright color comes out of the fossil material. Over here we have a potch color. So there's some stones, again, this is all magnifies. Pay attention to the size of my thumb. Not sure how universal these are, but there you go. These are very small pieces, just the size of that tab. Some, yeah, a couple of big bits in there, but this is all potch color anyway. So this is not solid color, crystal, this is potch color. Still some very nice stones can come from it, but that's what that would be graded as. It's not, there's going to be a lot of waste in that too. That 20% rule, you'd be lucky to get 10% of what that would weigh as cut stones. Nice and clean, worth selling stones. So that's potch color. Sort of similar here. Some of these have got some more solid color stones that can be cut, but again, bottom end of the spectrum. Nice color, makes some fantastic doublets maybe, and inlay. So still worth money, but what can you do with it? So then you start looking at, all right, let's go to cuttable material, Phil. Some cubepedi, some nice color in it. I have to hold it close for you to see, even in the jar. So it's not very strong color, but it's not one, it's about a 2 point something. May get brighter as I take the tops down and cut these, but that's a lot of waste off this bottom to clean up, a lot of the waste off the bottom here to clean up before you can get some stones out of it. So that's more typical cubepedi material, white or light opal, and potch backed with color, but you can get some really nice crystal from there. I'll even put some links to some videos where you can see some of that world-class opals. He's got a great channel. Yeah, you look at some of the stuff they pull out, it's fantastic. Yes, jealous. Step it up a bit, you've got some more crystally jelly material here, and so this will cut some really nice stones, but again, the waste and some of it's got fractures and cracks. Taking out the jar, scrutinizing it, dry, wet, daylight, as in sunlight as well as inside light, but some really nice stones will come out of this. Quite a bit of work to get them out. Again, not huge, that's magnified and odd shape, so, but that'll have a nice, very nice stone in it. And a few of these others. That's, yeah, stepping up the graded sort of opal a bit. Most of what's in there is around about roughly the same price range, say between 1 to 2, maybe some of it 3, even a bit more, per carat once cut. which means you wouldn't want to pay more than 5 to 10 really a carat on something like this. And again, not even that with some of them. Yeah, I don't mean, not saying anything against this parcel, but some, like the huge big bit that's got fractures all through it, that'll be doublet material. I did one of those in one of the last doublets videos I did, and yeah, it was quite fractured up, broken up, like purple with the green pinfire under it. Here's a bit of a mixed parcel. It's got a bit of matrix, hard matrix, that won't treat, and some crystal, some really nice crystal. I'm in the middle of carving that one. And yeah, this goes all the way in around it. I don't know how to get a clean stone, but the color blocks it out. If I can get a bit that's deep enough in there, I'll leave it in and see if I can get a stone. But yeah, a bit of a mixed bag, that one. Nice jelly sun flash. It might be good for a doublet. And yeah, the matrix up top. Again, what can be cut from it, what can be inlay, what are solids, what will I get ovals, will I get high domes, or you got to run that through your mind every time you're looking at this sort of material. Some really nice jelly crystal. They could cut solids, would be also fantastic for doublets, but again, not very, yeah, they're not super huge. They'll be nice little ring stones, couple of, maybe a pendant stone in there somewhere up top. But yeah, all the way up, we'll start with this one. Matrix. This is once treated, and you can buy it treated or untreated. Check that out. Can't buy that one though, not yet. And yeah, there's a bit of a variety of matrix, hard matrix, bit of concrete. Mostly hard matrix in there, and that comes as large pieces. You can get it broken down. I'll go into that a bit later on where you might be able to find yourself a nice piece. And all the way up to what I consider is going to be beautiful stones if ever cut, but not for a while. Gorgeous. So that's going to stay like that for a bit as a specimen. Nothing left to clean up. That's been cleaned up a bit. I made, yeah, it could do with tidying up just the last few bits of impurities on the surface to bring it back to full on, but I like it as is. I don't want to touch it yet. But yeah, if I was to cut that, I'd have to consider, well, what can I get out of it as opposed to what's it worth as a specimen, and do a bit of math in my head, and yeah, we'll see. But then you could also be buying, nonetheless, rough. Like, I actually found this piece noodling, but if this came out of some material that there was material in, and they left it all like this, and for you to go through yourself, you don't know what's in it. This one's not super spectacular, but when you have a look in here, we get a bit of water on the subject. Let's go in a bit. It's got some nice purple in there, all the way through there. It's this side more you can see. But yeah, so however far that goes in, it's got some really nice purple, and that treat's really dark. This sort of a concrete matrix, and we'll take a polish. So I'm leaving that one as a specimen at the moment, but that's what it would look like rough, straight out the ground. So here I've just set out a couple of example parcels. These aren't for sale, but on one end of the scale we've got the jelly crystal in the blues and purples and a bit of green. Very nice stones to be had, some fantastic doublets if needed, but we'll have to work around the sand and the potch. Some really nice colour in it, but again, it's not low grade material, but it's not super bright, and it's very translucent, And there's a lot of work to be done to get out of them what can be gotten out of them. Some really strong colour in that. And then you've got something that would cost a little bit more than a parcel like that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you got the more actual crystal. And a bit of milky white crystal. Cutting and carving to be done, and if possible any of the off-trimmed bits that can be salvaged without grinding away can be inlay or double it, who knows. But yeah, so you've got to be confident in what you're doing, you've got to be confident in what you're looking at, and understanding why there's a difference between the two. What's more marketable, what's more sellable. So then, again, like I say, consider what you can do. What can you do to maximize what you're buying? And that comes down to cutting. So whether you've got ovals, teardrops, or pear-shaped, however you'd like to describe that one. That one's sort of a free-form oval. It's not very calibrated at all, that one. More egg-shaped. Or totally free-form like this one. Turn around. More colour on it on the angle. But anyway, what can you do and can you sell them? Carvings. So I chose to carve this piece for the price of the parcel I paid with what I'd already gotten out of it. I've had this piece evaluated as is. It's 20 odd, nearly 30 carat. But beautiful specimen carving. Will be set into a pendant eventually. Could cut a fantastic oval. Some very rich colour in this one. Camera is not going to do it justice. It's so more, you can see into it, sort of colour on colour effect in person. But yeah, I chose to carve that. My choice. Same with this piece. I could have cut a stone out of a cuttable section. It's very undulated. I thought it looks really nice as a carving. So that's what I chose to do with that. And again, the more calibrated, if you want to on-sell your stones, I deal with my own. But if you want to on-sell them, that's where it will come down to things like this. Cutting a calibrated stone. It passes through, but I'll try and get it wedged in there. Just show that, yeah. Once you get your stones calibrated, that sets the size perfectly, and then you can go about putting it in a pre-sized setting. And people that deal with doing that love to buy stones that are calibrated, because then they get a bunch of cast rings or pendants, clip them in, sell them. No alterations, no having to make up custom settings. So calibrated stones is the way to go if you're trying to do this to make some money and sell stones. Otherwise, set them yourself however you'd like and hope they look nice enough for someone to buy. So, okay, so trying to keep this video in a timely manner, and I'm sort of wrapping it up in a minute, but let's get to some important stuff. If you buy a parcel online, but you're not happy when you receive it, ask for a refund and don't touch or alter the parcel, just return it. If you touch it, there's no obligation for a refund. You want to do anything to any of this after I sell it to you, I'm not taking it back because you may have ruined it. And that can be the accusation. And you just need to be on your game. Don't spend big if you're starting out and you're unsure of what you're capable of, or it's on you if you learn the hard way. Don't let emotions get in the way of purchasing. Like, oh, I'm so in love with it. Oh, I'd love that. Your tastes are not everybody else's. And if you're trying to cut to sell, which is why I'm getting a lot of questions on how to sell, and I'll touch on that in a minute, you need to give the market what they want. And so don't be emotional on buying something. Make sure it's something you're going to be able to deal with. Like cars, if you want to make top dollar, sell Ferraris. If not, sell the cheaper versions, the everyday cars. It's the same with any business, really. For the buying your parcels from the miner, you can either buy in person, on the field, or in town, or you can buy online, miner direct. Now, here's where I'm going to give you, I'll put all the links for all this, so you know what and who I'm talking about and how to get to them. And I'm not going to mention everyone, it's just a couple of no-brainers to mention, I thought, and here we go. So, first on the list, you've got, from the miners, you've got, say, black lighters. From if you watch this channel, you watch the Opal Hunters show, you should know who the black lighters are. So they have the Black Lighters HQ Facebook page, and they do online live auctions. Don't get in a bidding frenzy and overbid. It doesn't work. Mark's pretty good on cutting it off when he thinks it's reached the price, if he has to, without letting it go for more than it's worth. And they do a fantastic job of running the auctions. It's quite a lot of fun. I watch it a lot. I haven't actually bought anything yet, so nonetheless, everything I see is positive. A lot of you may know already who I'm talking about. If not, I'll put it in the link and jump on. They do international postage as well. AbsoluteOpals.com. Carl and Olga Babic. They run Absolute Opals. He's a miner and also online sales. And you've also Angel from the Misfits, her page, Facebook page, I should say. And Sandra Berman, she has sweetopals.com. So that's an online miner seller. If you want to buy from other buyers that may not necessarily mine, here's the no-brainer. So you've got Black Opal Direct. Contact Justin and see what he can do for you with a parcel. He does beginners and expert and everything in between. You've also got Nobby Bob at theopalshop.com. I have bought from him. Very happy with what I buy. You've also got another no-brainer. It's NN Opals, aka 53 Frogs, aka Riley Gunn, and you'll find him on Australian Opal auctions, and or type in any one of those AKAs and you'll find him. And of course you've got gem fairs, gem shows that you can also buy from if there's one in your area, sort of thing. So you got to look around, keep in contact with the Opal world, what everyone's saying, and of course international. You're going to have, really, unless you're holiday here, no choice but to buy online and work from there. So do it responsibly and safely. Don't go spending a fortune, and make sure you always got the refund offer. That way you're always safely buying. If anything, you might be out of pocket, say a one-way postage, depending on the refund rules. But yeah, most miners that want to make business happen and not have to deal with refunds, they won't stuff you around. They'll make sure that one way or another you're happy. Just make sure that you're not being a difficult customer and underestimating their Opal. If they're underestimating or overestimating their Opal, don't buy from them. Same thing. Just find someone you're happy with. And these ones I've mentioned, I'm pretty sure everyone will find are quite reasonable to deal with. Now, one last thing I'd say is, look, don't do what one fella on Facebook is doing. And that's jumping onto the Opal scene and in 5 minutes tries to become the new Opal sheriff in town, telling everyone they're doing it all wrong. The buyers aren't paying enough, while the sellers are charging too much. Encouraging people into private chats to complain about a sale simultaneously accusing others of talking about him in private chats, calling out people he won't name, calling them bad business, while he wants people to join his seller-buyer club as he has the best opals and prices. He's just getting everyone offside, and I'd shy away from him myself, or I have shied away from him, and I won't really have anything to do with it. That's on Facebook, and I'll leave it at that. It's just too foul-mouthed, it's too aggressive, and you can't sit there and rag on everyone. I don't know who he was 5 minutes ago, but apparently he's all omnipotent, and we should listen to him. But I can't listen to it. So just be careful of getting into buying clubs. Yeah, I don't know. Look, you just buy a parcel and you pay for what you get, and you see what you get, and you're the buyer. It's all yours. There's no, I'm going to buy a big parcel and split it up. Even if I did that, I'd split it up, then offer the split up parcels and see if everyone wanted them, make the sale happen. But I wouldn't show the whole lot to everyone and go, you'll get a portion of this. It's too hard, unless you're talking mine run stuff that's much of a muchness. That's like, they've picked out the good stuff. Here's the leftovers. Here, have a scoop. But that's different. But other than that, I can't get into the whole ragging on people. Just find your way around the industry. Don't make too many waves. Some people may be displeased with a person. You don't know the real reasons. Feel it out. Avoid it. Pay whatever attention you want. But don't get wrapped up into the politics of the Opal world. Everyone will know eventually who is reputable, and as I've said, there's some people there, and you can ask that around. I'll put the links in. They're quite reputable and they're worth trusting. So if you want to buy Opal guaranteed, go through them. Feel your way around all the other people I haven't mentioned. There's a whole massive amount that I haven't mentioned, and they are worth also buying from Facebook and online. But yeah, the one I mentioned before, that's the new Opal sheriff, he's just ragging on Andamuka mining, or Andamuka miner. And it's like, mate, you're not saying who it is. And obviously someone cut a parcel and wants a refund. So, well, they're not going to get it. Deal with it. Don't touch it next time, send it back before you cut it. But he's handling that in a poor way, ragging on an Andamuka miner. No one's going to know who it is. And, well, guess what? I mine in Andamuka. Just be careful. It's don't pay attention to it for the most of yous. To whoever bought the parcel was unhappy. Lesson learnt. Don't know why they spent so much if they didn't know what they were doing. Anyway, have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Try and turn your Opal into something everyone wants to. Online sales, start an online Facebook group or page to sell your Opal on. eBay or the other Etsy's and Amazon, or I don't know who else. I've only ever used eBay. You can start your own online website. There's many avenues to put yourself out there, but you can't jump on a market that someone else has created. You're going to have to create your own. Till then, you just sell your Opals for what someone's prepared to pay for them. Leave it at that. And once you make a name for yourself, then you can start maybe charging more, or appropriately. Like, I'd rather buy from Black Opal Direct than some random black opal cutter that I don't know who it is and how quality their opal is and how well they've cut it, because I don't know them. So familiarity, wait till people are familiar with you and happy with what you've been putting out, and then you'll gain the attention that you think you want. Or you'll find out why you're not getting it, and you'll have to make some adjustments in maybe the cutting or the buying or what you're paying. So who knows? But just have fun with it until you're thinking of taking it seriously, and then you're on your own. You have to take it serious, and you get out what you put in, I suppose. Just be careful. So I hope some of this helps. I don't know how much it's going to help or confuse you, but that's the best I can do in the quick time I've got to touch on a whole bunch of stuff without doing too much. Yeah, I can't help much more than that. I can't tell you who the miners are that I buy from or anything like that. That's my business. But the ones that are public domain, there you go. Have fun. Cheers.